Hey, it's Greg Stanley. Do you know you can now win prizes such as a Starbucks gift card, Concord tickets, or car swag for being the first to answer an entertaining trivia question? Get the weekly trivia question by following me on Instagram or Facebook at the Collector Car Podcast and just DM me your answer. The first person with the correct answer wins. Also, as a new aspect of my automotive passion and hobby, I am a car specialist consultant for RM Sotheby's. If you need assistance consigning a collector car at Amelia Island, Pebble Beach, Auburn, West Palm, or Hershey, email me directly at gstanley@rmsotheby's.com.
This is the Collector Car Podcast, the home for the auto enthusiast. Join Greg Stanley as he applies over 25 years of insights and analytical experience to the collector car market. He will interview the experts and throw in some fun stuff as well.
Hey, it's Greg Stanley with the Collector Car Podcast. Today we're going to talk about a lot of cool stuff, all about BMWs. Going to start with Travis Scott's BMW E30 M3 that's been trending on social media. We'll also go into Paul Walker's collection that was recently sold at auction, including 5 lightweights. And we're going to review all the BMWs, or most of the BMWs, coming up for sale at Amelia Island in a week and a half or so with the BMW expert Eric Keller from Enthusiast Auto Group, who has bought and sold many of these cars that are coming up for auction. So Eric, thank you for joining us today.
Yeah, absolutely, Greg. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, man, it's awesome. So we're having a situation where more BMWs are coming to auction at one time than ever, correct?
I've not seen this many BMWs come at one centralized, public auction, on a Concours weekend since. Amelia had one 4 or 5 years ago that was, a dozen, maybe 15, but they were a lot older cars overall in terms of average. So as far as this many young timer cars, where we've got, cars that are just a couple years old hitting the public venue is something I've not seen before and quite excited to participate in and meet everybody down there. So we're heading down there on Wednesday and quite excited to see how this all shakes out. It's because first time kind of thing, so it should be quite fun.
Yeah, and this is really cool for me because we've been trying to coordinate getting together for a while now, probably a year and a half or so. And
Yeah.
This has been a great time to get together and finally put this thing together. Just a great weekend to review a bunch of BMWs, which we'll do today.
Yeah, it's going to be quite an exciting show, and I'm looking forward to it.
Well, let's start off with one of your former cars, Travis Scott's BMW that I mentioned earlier. Could you give me an overview of what happened on that car? And I'm a huge fan of Spike Feresten's podcast, which is where I heard about it. So if you could you just kind of give us that whole story and your thoughts on it?
Yeah, I kind of heard like everybody else did in the podcast, and Zuckerman and I, we've done quite a few deals over the years, and most of his BMWs in recent time have come through the EAG program, and he's also, his first car he bought from us, the first time I ever talked to him, it was almost after hours, and hey, I'm calling about an M5. I'm like, what? And long story short, he called on a car that wasn't for sale in our collection and didn't let me off the phone until he owned it and made an offer that we literally just couldn't refuse. And actually, I might as well just tell the story because it's frankly pretty hilarious.
Sure.
And it was a 2003 white on black M5 that was in the EAG collection that we'd had maybe 6 months, and I probably spent 30, 40 hours trying to convince the original owner to sell the car to us. Once he reached out to us saying, I want to sell the car, and then
Right.
he went the other way around and tucked tail when the reality set in that he might have his family member separated from him. It was a really special car. It was the nicest E39 M5 that I had seen in that color combination, which is a white-black, hard to beat in a final year model year, one owner car. So I'll give you $70,000 for the car. And at the time, this is 2013.
Right.
$70,000 on a 2003 M5 was like mind blowing.
Right.
That was way beyond what the market was doing. Granted, the car had 10,000 miles. It was virtually perfect.
Right.
And I was like, thank you, sir, but I just can't do it. I'm not going to find another one of these. I haven't since.
Right.
And he's like, $75,000, last and final. And I've only talked to this guy 4 minutes, and he's giving me $75,000 offer on this car that's not for sale. And 2013, I had like 27 M5s in stock, E39s.
Okay. Yeah.
So it was, at the
Any
height,
other one you can take. Right?
at the height of the E39 supply chain, and the market is just starting to transition and start appreciating at the bottom of the bell curve.
Right.
and a light bulb went off, and I'm like, I have 27 M5s. I immediately flashed back to the first E28 M5 that we sold for MSRP, pretty much 45 and change back in like 2009. And at that point, that was kind of the bottom, and the market started going up on those. And it was an interesting idea that if I hit 75 grand was about MSRP on that white M5, a little bit over. So if I say yes and that goes down, then maybe that's a sign the market's going to change. If the market changes with 27 of these cars,
you're in good shape.
I think it's better for the business. Short-term loss for long-term gain.
Right.
And I sold the car to him, and the coolest part about it is I bought it back from him 7,000 miles later, 3 years later. Put it through the program, sold it again, bought it back from that guy, put it through the program, put some Dynan stuff on it for that guy. He'd had like 10 M5s down in Mississippi. Dr. Marks, and bought it back from him. And then Zuckerman sees it on our website with 20,000 miles and says, "Here, is that my old M5?"
Right.
Hey, Paul. Yeah. It's like, I want it back. I miss it. So that was like 2 years ago. And so he buys his old M5 back from us. And long way to get to the Travis Scott part of the story, but I think Matt Farah just did a video on that white M5 today.
The exact car.
So check out the Smoking Tire.
The Smoking Tire, yep.
Yeah,
big fan.
His podcast. They just did a nice little drive video. But so different Alpine white M car that we sold, Paul, was this Alpine white on Cardinal 8,000 mile beauty that was also part of our collection. So this was after that fact.
Oh, that hurts even more.
So that's why the M5 story has to come first, because that's my intro to Paul. So Paul now thinks he's got me in his pocket, that he can just buy anything out of our collection because he's who he is, and we do have a good relationship, and I do enjoy working with him, and we've certainly had a lot of good conversations over the years. But definitely an enthusiast, and he drives his cars, which is great. He's just not putting them in a bubble.
Right.
So I hear on the podcast, like everybody else, that Paul has succumbed to the money. And he's had it off.
Money.
He's had an offer he can't refuse.
Right. You've been there.
I have been there. So I guess the tables got turned on him, and in this case, it worked out in his favor because apparently he had a nice little windfall on that car. We sold it. It was pretty close to a high water mark, if not even a high water mark.
Now this is 8,300 original miles, unrestored. Gorgeous M3, correct?
That I had owned for 2 years in our collection. It was one of the nicest ones we've ever.
It wasn't on the showroom floor for sale. It was in your collection.
It was not for sale.
Right, not for sale. Okay.
So he pays me a boatload of money for that one too.
Right.
And then sells it for a boatload plus probably another boatload.
Right. So what does Travis Scott do with this pristine 8,300 mile M3 car?
I don't think you have to Google it very hard to find, given that they've already made a Matchbox diecast as a tribute. But it's my understanding that it became kind of an album poster car for his next album. And then I guess I had a Google alert pop up in December. Didn't think anything of it, but I see a picture of this white rally-inspired E30 M3 with all this painted stripes. And it looked okay for a period, DTM tribute. And he's auctioning it off for charity. Hey,
right.
Cool.
Pretty cool.
That's sweet. That's sweet. Had no idea.
No idea.
This is like 7 weeks ago. I see this car and I look at it, read the article. I don't know who Travis Scott is. It doesn't. Nothing registers. Because why would it?
Right.
Paul then, hey, I'm selling your beloved car to a rapper for a bunch of money. Thanks. Didn't get that text.
Right.
So he sells the car, and then they painted the stripes on and did what they did, and I guess that's one less car that we'll be buying back. We try to buy them all back, but maybe I would buy it back only because of the story now, if somebody wanted it after the fact. But
so I was going to surprise you and bring you one of those Matchbox cars, but it turns out they're hand painted and were $2,500 each. So I'm sorry.
I would have liked that.
I value our friendship, but not that much.
It could have went not a nice case over here, but all right. Well.
Wow. Okay. Well, let's move on from that sad moment in that poor car's life. And why don't we move on to the BMW Lightweights? So Paul Walker sold a bunch of his estate, I guess sold a bunch of his cars, a lot of BMWs, not just lightweights, but he sold 5 lightweights, and you have some personal history with a few of those, don't you?
Yeah. Let's see. It was the Barrett Jackson auction in Scottsdale.
Okay.
The family consigned 7 BMWs. They had the 5 lightweights and 2 E30 M3s, and 3 of those 7 cars we had sold Paul and his crew at Always Evolving, and
Right.
This was way back though. This is about that same time as the M5 with Zuckerman and whatnot.
So what were those worth at the time, approximately?
Yeah. So the first lightweight we sold them was a 14,000 mile car. That was no question the nicest car of that group there. I was there on site and reviewed all the cars, spent a lot of time talking to people and stuff at Barrett and looking at the other cars that we didn't sell them just to kind of size everything up to understand what the market was going to do. And when it finally hammer struck, which was quite crazy, we'll come to that. But
right.
The first car, 14K, super great car, original. I bought that car from one of the lead counsel of Walmart down in Arkansas.
Okay.
And actually bought another Johnny Ciccato E30 M3 from him since. Great interactions. It's great with enthusiasts that really care about their cars. That they've presented us the opportunities to buy these cars. I mean, most of the cars we buy are phone rings, and people want to keep them in really good homes. And we try our best. I mean, Zuckerman's been a really great guy to sell cars to. He usually keeps them in great homes. We buy them back from him, like the M5 and whatnot. But we do try to keep them close to the chest. And in this case. With the lightweight, we sold that then to Paul, and it was a great exercise. And as we're loading the car up, another lightweight was offered to us that had just 4,000 miles.
Wow.
And the car had an interesting backstory that was checkered, to say the least. And we gave Paul all the information. And hey, it's coming in. We don't really want the car, but if you want it, here's $5,000 over what we're paying for. It would be fine and fair. And it brings another deal over here together. We're that far apart over there. So if you want it, it's yours. We can put it on the same truck.
Odd that a car with only 5,000 miles would have some type of checkered past, but I guess it happens.
It does happen, especially with a homologation type car when it's built for a spec racing series.
Right.
Things come at you fast when you're on a racetrack, especially walls.
Right.
And so that car gets loaded up and it goes out. And but anyway, the car is sold for
crazy.
I'm pausing because it's just like. I was on stage while that was all happening and had a couple clients with us and had some pre-bids put in, and I was expecting that we were going to take some of those cars home.
Right.
I thought that, Barrett Jackson, nobody's going to be buying BMWs at this event. This is not the target market, and I could not have been more wrong. When the first car went through, I mean, I was electrified. I was shocked. I mean, I didn't know what to say. I was speechless, which doesn't happen very often.
Right.
And then the next car came, and it was kind of just turned into a blur because I thought I was dreaming. These cars are selling for $200,000+.
Yeah, so you have the M lightweight appreciation factor, which is strong, and then you also have the celebrity factor, which can be unknown at some points. So you had a little bit of both. Kind of touching those cars, right? Yeah,
it was really kind of a cool moment because I mean, the hobby is really changing fast, and I'm sure that guys 20, 30 years older than I that have been in this industry back then had probably had some moments like this when they're seeing a GT 500 or whatever that they'd bought for $5,000 and it's crossing the block on TV for $150,000. Like I remember the day
when those were $12,000.
Right. I'll tell you a story about driving that car, jumping them tracks or whatever the fun memories that they had with it. It's part of the hobby and the good part of it. But it was pretty staggering. I mean, so the dollars back then, I think they were trading typically, the good ones were trading around $40,000 or so.
Right.
30 to 40, and everybody else thought it was probably 20 to 30, but the better cars usually sell for a little bit more than what everybody else is actively seeing because most people don't have access to the top type stuff, typically speaking.
Right.
But I do remember exactly what that low mileage car sold for. It was $30,000.
Wow.
And we brought in trade credit $25,000. I remember it very vividly, and it's just over in Indiana.
And it sold for 10x at least.
Yeah, it was at 350 hammer, so that's 385. So there you go.
Right.
That's it. Yeah, that was nuts.
Now, of those five, which one do you wish you had?
Well, the 14,000 mile car was the one I'd hoped to bring back with me, and we spent a lot of time going back over it. And it had a couple small things that had changed since we sold it. All the cars had been kind of in this warehouse in Southern California that was not climate controlled, so there was some heat atrophy related issues with a couple of the cars that didn't get quite remedied. Barrett went through and did a good job in doing the basic stuff and putting a spoiler on here and this, that, there. But they didn't do a real complete job. But they've got bigger fish to fry because they're charging $400 or $500 for a bidder pass and 10,000+ bidders or whatever. They're running a very profitable business. I can't fault them for that.
Any impact to the value of those cars if they had to decals or not, or were the decals in the trunk and you put them on?
No. Every car was delivered to the dealer with decals on. There was no such thing as a decal delete kit.
Okay.
That was simply a car that probably had some time where the decals were taken off at some point.
Gotcha.
It wasn't an exclusive option to not have that stuff within the lightweight program.
Right.
Probably quite the opposite.
Right.
And the cars were more modified than not across the group of them.
Okay.
Or at least previously modified at some point.
Right.
And the cars were used and driven and enjoyed, which, that's why Eric Wensberg, the M brand director at the time, that was his goal with the lightweight project, was to build basically a spec, car that you could take right to the track and run IMSA in the GT class. And
right.
A lot of the enthusiasts, saw that as an opportunity to buy, a track car without having to scrape all the sound deadening off of the floors
right.
and take the 160, 70 pounds of extra sound deadening type stuff out, in addition to not having a sunroof, so you don't have to weld one shut or have AC and all the extra weight that was saved.
Saved you a bunch of work.
They're like 200 pounds lighter weight. It's the lightest weight E36 chassis built across the platform, globally speaking. And we're going to do something pretty fun, I hope. I was talking with some of the Haggerty guys, and we've got I guess I'll drop it here. We've got an E36 M3 GT coming, which is the homologation E36, and it turns 25 years old in May 16th. We plan on having it at the border, the customs, that week.
Wow. Okay.
And so we're talking with Haggerty about maybe doing an article and running an E36 M3 lightweight against a GT up at Mid-Ohio.
Oh, that'd be cool.
And it only makes sense to have a guy that drove a E36 in period behind the wheel, since he's familiar with the platform.
Right.
We got to check up with our buddy Bill Oberlin. Hang out with Bill in Oktoberfest in South Carolina this past year. We didn't talk about this topic because I didn't know GT was coming in, but I'm sure I will twist his arm. He's going to be up there getting all the Letterman Ray Hall cars shaken down for the spring season at some point, and maybe we can time that well enough to have those two cars up there to do a couple comparison laps.
Yeah, that'd be really cool. And speaking of videos, you did post a really cool video about the lightweights recently, right? And you had 5 of them in the shop or something like that?
Yeah. We've got 6 lightweights on property right now.
Wow. Out of how many were built?
126.
Wow. So your percentage is 5%. That's really high for one shop.
Yeah. We've sold somewhere around 35 or 40 of them.
Oh, wow.
We have one in our collection that has a whopping 47 miles on it.
Is that the lowest mile one known in existence?
I don't know of any that are lower, and I think I would know at this point.
Don't let Zuckerman get it.
I'm not selling that one too. Oh, no.
Just kidding,
Paul.
Hey,
Paul, $2 million. Cheers.
Wow. Now, weren't there a couple other M cars out of that collection?
Yeah, so they had 2 E30 M3s, both white, 88 that we had sold them with 32,000 miles that came out of Pennsylvania, a 2-owner car. And that was, again, the same right at that same time. As soon as we bought it, they let us know they were looking for those. They wanted white ones. That was the theme with their BMWs, clearly.
Okay.
And so we pretty much loaded up in Pittsburgh and sent it straight that way, which we don't do often, but the relationship was off to a pretty brisk start, and we had done a lot of business at that point. So, it's kind of cool to work with that group and know that we're helping build a stable that was purpose built to celebrate the hobby and the passion that he had for this era of cars, and we had that same passion. He's buying all the cars that we have in our garage in our collection, and the stuff that gets us excited too. And so that was really cool to share that bond. It was really a good time in business and certainly rewarding. Definitely was validating too back then, because we're not quite established as we are today back then. And knowing that we were doing some pretty cool things with some pretty big cars was exciting, and certainly has helped pave the way to get to where we're at today.
Yeah, no kidding. Well, and also, we're speaking about lightweights now, but, we can transition into the cars we actually want to cover on this podcast. So these are all the cars that are coming up for auction through one of the auction houses at Amelia Island. Can you tell us a little bit about the lightweight you have coming up in Amelia?
Well, it's not mine.
It's not yours?
It's
okay.
not mine, but it was.
It was. All right. The EAG touches on it.
So a good client, a good friend out east, he's a physician, and we spoke with him a couple months ago. He's got a pretty big opportunity coming up with his practice to expand and add some more infrastructure, and that, of course, takes money.
Capital. Yeah.
Yeah. So he had still has a pretty sizable collection, but was looking for some quick liquidity, and so obviously it's easy to strike a big line through a fraction of it, and sell it in this venue, and so that's what's happening. And so this lightweight is one of close to a dozen or so of these cars that are out of his stable. And it's an EAG car. I mean, I probably shouldn't be talking about it because I plan on bringing it back with us. But that didn't work out so well for me the last time around. But maybe it will this time. But it's a good car, and it's had a good home. And the previous owner was certainly a really good custodian, and glad they reached out to us to give us the opportunity to have it back then and become part of its life.
Yeah, for sure. Now, what can you tell me about the other car that's coming up that's like it, the other M3? Same era.
Yeah, so same collector, 88 M3. It's a Diamond Schwartz in black, has 18,000 miles on it.
Wow.
It's kind of a cool car. Going back to the other two cars, Paul's collection real quick. I mean, those cars set records. The 91 was a white one with an interesting story that we also know. We didn't have a part in that car, but that's $220,000. The lightweights collectively did like 1.3 million. I'm sure most people listening know what all the results were, but the other E30 did 150 grand, so 165 with the fee.
Right.
For 32,000 mile 88 white on that was a Nature, a tan interior. That's definitely a really strong result. This car has an estimate of 100 to 130. That's probably within the ballpark. This car, though, I'm sure people never thought that it was going to be 100 or 130 grand. This car specifically, this VIN number was the first real big car, E30 M3 wise. It was the lowest mileage E30 M3 we ever found way back when, and I'm going back to like 2006 or 7.
Okay.
And I remember finding the car. I remember getting crazy excited and being extremely deflated when hearing what the owner wanted to sell it for. Somehow we ended up getting a deal done, and I ended up selling it to a Ned. It's all coming back to me. Ned was really detail oriented, and we spent a lot of time on the phone with Ned. And he ended up buying the car, and he had a good ownership experience, and Ned ends up turning around and selling the car back to me for a little bit more money shortly thereafter, a couple of years, and we end up selling it to the now collector that's selling it with Gooding. And I remember that car really well because it was like really one of the first cars that I really got ripped apart online about, because I think we had it up for 35 or maybe $40,000.
And what were they typically going for at that time?
Well, it was the rule 15. I mean, you buy any E30 M3 for 15 grand.
15 grand, you're asking 35, 40.
Yeah. And I mean, so here we are, 2+X.
Right.
For a car, and it might even been a 30 grand. We were more, but it wasn't. It's all relative. I mean, it's a 17,000.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a number one condition car that we'd never seen anything like that. The market hadn't seen many, if any, come to the bubble car maybe that had crazy low mileage, a different white one. But those type of numbers weren't put out there in the open market, and most of those top level cars trade hands privately and do so at numbers that the public doesn't see.
Right.
But not when you're a young budding entrepreneur. You got to put your price on the door. They're not going to give you a call.
Right.
And we caught a lot of heat for that.
Yeah, you do that and people don't like it.
Yeah. Well,
then you look at now, it's a bargain.
But it's the same thing. I put the price out there and people didn't like it. And today, a lot of the cars that we sell, we want to actually involve the clients into the storyline and make them a part of this next chapter if this is a good fit for them. And we want to sell the car by interview to a small degree and making sure it's a good fit. And a lot of the guys that are selling their cars to us, the main reason they're selling them to us is so that we ensure the cars go to a good home the next time, and we help write a good chapter for that car's life. That's more important to a lot of these people than the money. They got plenty of money. They want to make sure that the car that they loved is treasured and cared for and honored by the next guy.
Not bought by a rapper and redone. Right?
Yeah, exactly. Sorry about that, Harold in Georgia. Mustang collector down there that was the original owner. Sorry, buddy. Out of my control. But we did what we could. But keeping those cars in really good homes is certainly really important for us.
Right.
And so now when I don't put a price online, it's the same. I catch a bunch of heat that, or why aren't you putting your numbers on there? I'm not going to call you if you're not going to put your price on. I'm like, well, if you're interested, if you really want a car at this caliber, we're happy to sell it to you. We're happy to tell you the price. We'll give you everything that we have about the car. I'll even tell you what you paid for it if we know you.
Right.
It's not smoke and mirrors. We're very, very honest about everything that we do. But it's kind of a double-edged sword, I suppose. But it's funny how it's kind of come full circle. And here's this car now coming up and selling for, again, 3-4x of what it did back then. But we'll see, in next Friday on March 6th when that rolls off. But great car. I mean, it's super, super nice car.
We'd be watching that one closely.
It won't go too cheap, or it'll be coming through EAG again. I mean, it's a great car. I mean,
right.
It's been so long since I've seen it. That's probably one of the E30 M3s that's the furthest removed from coming back through the program.
Okay.
So it'd be a really good exercise for my guys for us to be able to see, the condition and the quality. I mean, I've got a pretty good idea. I'm sure it's got a little bit of vehicular atrophy that happens when the car has had 200 or 300 miles since we sold it 13 years ago.
Right.
But we know how to fix that, and we have a lot of experience fixing really stupid low mileage cars that haven't been driven around, in a long period of time. That's why people send their cars to us to go through our program.
Right. Right. Well, let's move on to the 2002 BMW M5.
Yeah. That is an E39 M5 that we bought from the first owner that we've consigned as well. It's a 21 and change, 22,000 mile car. The E39 M5 market has been hot. We spoke about it obviously a little bit here already, and this is just it's the Madonna car, meaning it's a silver on black. It's a Titan trim car, just like the BMW films that so many people can relate to back in the early 2000s. I mean, what BMW enthusiast has not seen all of those? Guy Ritchie, producing just a thriller of a 5-8-10 minute video. I mean, I think that those are pretty hard to get back in the time. They were kind of limited release, and BMW did a big hubbub about those.
And I'm actually in love with that car, and I actually texted you a couple weeks ago. I actually tracked one down. Remember that? In the rain, pulled up into a restaurant, and I flagged the guy down, and it was a 36,000 mile, the original one. Speaking of rare, though, if I'm correct, in your back here, you got something that's really rare. Did I not see a under 10,000 mile M5 back there that you just barn find, single owner?
Yeah. We've. I'm not gonna let the cat out of the bag yet, just because the car got here today.
That's insane.
But you get a find of a decade about every decade, and here.
Starting the decade off great.
We're not even 2 months into the roaring 20s here, but we've found the barn find of it's a garage find rather in the Southwest, an E28 M5 that is
under 10,000 miles.
Yeah,
that thing is gorgeous.
It's the second lowest mileage one I've ever witnessed, and it's been very elusive, but it's under good reason. It's been with just one owner since new, and we got a call literally a week ago today. And here the car is today.
And I think you saw it the same time I saw it, right?
Yes, that's correct.
Wow. Yeah, that is really cool.
It's going to be quite exciting, and I'm looking forward to figuring out how to bring that car to the next owner the right way. But it's definitely an exciting opportunity, and with our 7,000 mile car, which is the only one that's lower mileage than that, I sold that E28 M5 to better the family situation and buy the next house to get the kids in the right school and whatnot about 2 years ago.
You don't have any kids you got to put in school right now?
No, yeah.
Okay.
And so selling that E28 M5 back then with 7,000 miles was thankfully I sold it back to the guy that I bought it from. And so we keep the cars in the right network, and but that's the only car that I know of that has lower mileage than this one, and so maybe we'll keep this one. We'll see. Zuckerman probably will be calling me tomorrow.
What's this I hear about a under 10,000 mile with no price on it? Wow. Well, what would you like to cover next? What's the next one on the list here?
Well, we've got 2 other cars that we're going to consign or have consigned. All these cars, by the way, are going no reserve. We're not bringing them home. We're hopeful that the people that buy them are going to enjoy them first, and hopefully if they have questions, we're certainly happy to answer them. All 4 of these cars we've consigned have completed every step of the EAG Rejuve program.
Tell me that. Give me a little bit on the Rejuve program.
Baseline reset. It's make the car new for a second time. These cars, whether it's age or mileage or a combination of both, or the bike fell on it, or there's a scratch here, there's an imperfection there. If you want it back to close to new again, as sympathetically as possible, preserving the originality where is possible. We've got 20 years now doing that with our inventory.
Right.
Every car that we buy to bring to market, we want to make sure it's as close to new as possible, because then we can buy it back with that much more confidence, which is the cornerstone of our business model, and buying the cars back because we bought the right car to begin with.
Right.
And so we really put our money where our mouth is in that regard when we have the opportunity. And thankfully, with all the guys that we sell cars to, because we had that conversation, we built that relationship. They're going to take great care of it, and we keep constant communication with them throughout their ownership to make sure that they have full access to all of our resources, all of our shops, all the networks. Every shop in every major metropolitan area knows us, and we know them and who's good, and make sure they get good service outside of the EAG network. And then we buy the cars back and put them back through. The program has evolved to the point that that's really become our main business. We started out selling cars. We're still selling cars. We've never changed. We're selling more cars than we ever have.
Right.
But at this point, we have more VIN numbers in our system that are not cars that we've sold. Rather, they're cars that customers have bought elsewhere. I'm a high bidder on this car today. It's at EAG tomorrow.
Right.
And going through and resetting that baseline so that they're ready to enjoy the car reliably, safely. That's a big one. I mean, there's a lot of safety things that people just tend to overlook. I mean, tire age is such a simple thing. And Evan sitting right there 10 feet from us had a massive car wreck 16 years ago this August because of bad tires, because I just didn't know any better. I was young and dumb and stupid and cheap, and that almost cost him his life because of a simple investment that I didn't know, or it wasn't brought to my attention to make that investment.
Right.
And so we don't let other enthusiasts have that risk. We're going to bring that stuff to their attention so that it's done right and done with the best products out there, and BMW parts, Michelin parts, done by guys that have, it's muscle memory for this. I mean, we've got the best tech team. I mean, and they're only BMW, and they're only doing predominantly M. So the experience case, the exposure case, I mean, I don't think there's any place that's worked on more BMWs this far removed from new, especially in the M world, as this crew. And we do a great job making sure that the cars are ready to start the next chapter safely and enjoyably and drive the way they should. I mean, you buy it to drive it. I mean, who's driven an E39 M5 that walked away and said, or an E30 M3 said, I wouldn't want to drive that again.
Speaking of putting a car through its paces, I was fortunate, I don't know, almost 2 years ago now, I came by here and you had one of your techs take me for one of the coolest rides I've ever been on. I believe it was an 88 M3, but a really special one.
Yeah.
Tell me more about that. And if you can check out the Instagram video, I'll post it tonight. It's we took it to Redline, and you got to run it through its paces, make sure it's going to perform for the customer, which is what you guys were doing. But tell me about that car.
Yeah, that was a 1988 M3 Evolution 2.
5,000 miles?
With 5,000 miles.
Oh my gosh.
And it had always been in service and always kept up, which is a pretty big thing. A lot less work to bring the car back up a second time in that case. But we were preparing that car to send it out to Monterey, so that had been 2.5 years ago.
Okay.
And we sold it to a client out there, and very, very big car, one of the lowest mileage Evo 2s. The Evo 2s had a high use and consume rate. I mean, they were tracked, and great way to get a track car with all the hot stuff on it at not a lot of premium relative to the time when these cars were not that very expensive. I mean, you could buy this car, that car was probably 25, 30, 35,000 pounds at some point in its life, maybe even a little bit less. And thankfully the family that had it took really good care of it, and you got to.
I got to enjoy it as a passenger.
Yeah, that was the final, one of the final rounds of quality control, and Sean, took you for a good hot ride, and we got to push every button and make sure every function tests out that you're going to get a turnkey car, because that's what you paid for.
Yep.
We're not the cheapest place out there. But you're going to get what you paid for, and we're going to stand behind it. And if there's a problem when you got there, it's my problem, not his, right?
Yeah, what's the market on that car today?
That car's a lot. More than what the Travis Scott's car sold for back then.
So, what, 350, 3, something like that?
It's in that range. You're not far off.
Wow.
But it's a number one car that's a significant outlier. That's a dot way all by itself.
Right.
Those are the cars that seem to keep pushing the market and keep pushing the needle. The stuff that is just really far out there, the top 5% of stuff is typically what sells, and even in a lower market or down market, that stuff can set new records.
Right.
The 80s, 90s stuff's not in down market right now. I think it's doing pretty well, and all the data would suggest that the buyers are relatively young and just coming into their money, so it's a pretty good spot to be in. I think that this segment's got a pretty good set of legs on it.
Absolutely.
It's odd because the buyers actually, for a lot of our stuff over the last 3 or 4 years, they've gotten notably younger on average. It's been very interesting, and we're tracking it. We share a lot of this information, as does Hagerty with us, and trying to kind of stay ahead of stuff. And I think we're positioned for pretty exciting next couple of years within these small niche markets.
Right. Absolutely. Yeah. Well, speaking of which, what's the next one on the list for today? The 535?
Yeah, we've got a bronzite beige metallic 535i and E28, full Euro bumper conversion, Euro headlights. Great enthusiasts behind that car in the past that have really done a good job caring for it. We bought the car and used the car and drove the car and had a lot of fun with it and showed it down at Vintage, and a lot of great feedback on the car. I think it'd be a really good car to see where the market's at in that capacity. The car's got a trunk full of trophies to back it up.
Right.
And so that car is, again, no reserve, as well as a 2001 Z3 M Coupe. It's a 7,000 mile car that we purchased from a client in California. It was actually part of a package deal. Just a low mileage stock, honest, car that's all VIN tags match. It's a good car. It's not perfect, but it's not too far off.
Right.
And the S54 is the one to have with the Z3 M Coupes, and the North American market was pretty blessed, receiving the lion's share of the S54 M Coupes. So the
Is that also known as the clown shoe?
Yeah,
the
clown shoe.
The
The bread van.
Love those.
Yeah, the M shoe.
Yep.
It's an E30 M3 rear suspension geometry, E36 M3 front with an E46 M3 drivetrain. So it's kind of like the trifecta of the first 3 M3s put into one small little funky shape that it's just a riot to drive.
Oh, I love it.
Dude, they rip.
You got a really cool gray one back there. I know that's not the appropriate paint name.
Yeah. Steel gray, metallic.
Steel gray. Oh, it wasn't that far off.
Yeah,
okay.
Yeah. It's an 02 with a big motor as well, sunroof elite. We bought that car actually in Berkeley, California, and I used that car during Monterey Pebble Beach Week.
Oh, nice.
About 3 years ago. We sold it to the GM of Ferrari of San Francisco.
Okay.
And then bought it back from him, and it's back going through the Reju program again.
Now, we just covered a 535i. What percent of your cars today are not M cars? Like, do you see as the market goes up, like all boats go up with a rising tide?
Sure.
You're seeing the non-M cars gaining appreciation as well at the same, well, maybe not the same rate, but an appreciable rate?
Yeah, I mean, when stuff gets out of budget for certain enthusiasts, then you look at the alternative markets and what other cars would be an alternative opportunity. And then those typically start to trend upwards as well. I mean, this is a statistical thing that Hagerty and others also track. And the 535s, as the E29 M5s have gone up, the 535s have as well. And this very car that we're auctioning sold on Bring a Trailer for $50,000 in 2017.
Wow, what's the estimate now?
30 to 50.
Okay.
And the estimates, I think, have become quite a bit more realistic. And as we saw in Scottsdale, a lot of the right caliber cars that had really conservative estimates did extremely well and did proportionally much stronger relative to the estimate than the last 2 or 3 years when the auction houses were quite a bit more bullish and maybe trying to push the market a little bit. I think a lot of the auction estimates have come right back down to a more manageable. I mean, I can't speak for everybody in other markets that I don't know, but we set the estimates with them in a very aggressive nature because I think that somebody's going to get a good deal, and if they don't show up to play, you're never going to know.
Right.
These are hard opportunities to replicate with cars that are this nice, and this is the top stuff, at least the stuff that we've consigned. You can't speak to that in most auction environments because one big thing, this is important. If you're going to buy a car at an auction, if you're going to buy a car anywhere, but if you're going to buy a car at an auction, get a specialist, pay a consultant, get advice from somebody that's not going to be the one writing the check, that can take their heart out of the equation, because there's a lot of work requiring a good solid head about them that can identify things that you might not see and get caught up in the moment, and all of a sudden you just bought a Woody wagon and had no idea that you even did so, because you just didn't do your homework, and whether it was a mistake or not, we'll see when the dust settles. But when you get it home and finally unravel a lot of mistakes, and a lot of these cars are showing up. That's actually another segue. I mean, so many of the cars that have been purchased recently on Bring a Trailer and other mediums, but a lot of Bring a Trailer cars have showed up at EAG straight from, we organize the logistics even from the seller's place. You buy it, you send them the money, we go pick it up for you, we bring it to the shop, we put it through the program. That's actually the lion's share of the cars in our workshop right now. And that M3 that you just saw, another and Euro M5 down there. And so we're uncovering some stuff that may or may not have been disclosed. And so having a car inspected by a trained professional before you're throwing your hand up in the air, I mean,
worth it.
Absolutely worth it.
What are the top 3 non-M cars you think everybody should keep an eye on? I know you mentioned the 335.
The 535.
535.
Yep. So Z8s are one that we do a lot of business with. If there's any car that we do the most non-M stuff with, would be Z8s. We've sold quite a few of those and have a lot of those. Actually, that's probably our number one car for Rejuve. You have the performance package installed, which you got to drill holes in the frame, so that's kind of a big deal. And having a body shop and the frame and body experience, we're going to have it right on the millimeter. You mess that up and on aluminum frame, that's a big deal.
Right.
But the Z8s are a good market to watch. I think anything E30 is certainly doing well. The E30 is such a great and just playful chassis. 318, 325, a wagon, a coupe, a convertible. I mean, they're all fun. They're new enough that they're reliable. They're old enough that they're analog, and they're tactile in their driving feedback and sensations. You can get a lot out of an E30 for not a lot of money. Whether it's an M3 or otherwise, you're going to have a lot of fun. We cut our teeth on E30s back in the day. Evan and I did a road trip when we were 17 and 19 to Florida. I don't know why our parents said that was okay, but we did. And it was a great trip in a 325 IS, and those memories are coming through here again.
Right. Yeah, for sure. Okay.
But a third one,
would it be the non-M clown shoe?
The Z3 Coupes and Z3 Roadsters are great cars. I would say that that's definitely a good market to enjoy. It's a good driver's car.
Okay.
I don't know that I would call it maybe a collector's car just yet. Some of them with real low mileage with the bigger motors maybe. The 335 ISs and the 330 ZHPs seem to have a really strong cult following. Those have really picked up a lot of traction and have been selling pretty well. E34s, 535s are really cool, fun cars. Still a pretty good bargain, but you're gonna roll your sleeves up. You're gonna have a lot of work to do there. I think that the E39 540 M Sport would be probably, arguably, maybe the third one if you had to pick. There's a lot of guys that those 540 M Sports or the 540 wagons, anything BMW touring. There you go.
Yeah.
That's the third one. Any BMW touring, period. Whether it's an E30 touring or an E34 touring, E39 tourings are certainly very popular. A lot of guys doing conversions. There's a $73,000 E39 M5 conversion, 6-speed, supercharged touring. Really cool. Done really right.
Right.
But $73,000 for a hot rod.
Right.
That's a lot of money.
That's a lot.
So I would go, if I had to pick a third, and actually I'd maybe even bump the 30s and go touring on number 2.
Okay. That's fair. Yeah. Okay. Well, what's next on our list? Got a few more here we're going to cover.
Might as well do a 2002 Turbo.
Oh, yeah. That's a great little car. Those have really appreciated the last few years. Seems like anything Turbo has appreciated a lot. Yeah,
the 2002 Turbo was the first European production turbo variant, just a couple months before the 930s.
Right.
The 2002 platform obviously paved the way for a lot of enthusiasts that have become very brand loyal.
Yep.
Just like the E36 did. I mean, in the E30.
Yeah.
And getting that next generation of enthusiasts set up to, dig in for the next 10, 20, 30 years to build those companies exactly what the 2002 did. It saved the company really in the history of BMW. We do not do a ton of 2002s. A little bit older than our mainstay. We have one in our collection. However, we know enough to be dangerous. But if you tell me you want us to work on your 2002 in a big, $10, $20, $30,000 capacity, I'm going to give you a couple names and referrals of who I would do. Can we do it? Yes. Can we do a great job? Absolutely. Is it our core competency, or are there better people out there? Yes, there are, and I'll be happy to give you the names and numbers because I want to stay in our lane. Right. If it's got an M badge on the back, if it's a car in that era of car, even if it's not an M in the same era, if we can do an M5, E39, we can do a 540 M Sport just as well. Right. But the 2002 Turbo, I don't know a lot about the car specifically, this particular VIN number. $150,000 to $175,000 estimate. I can tell you market overall. You can buy one for $75,000 to $80,000. It's probably not going to be a really great car that you're going to need to do a lot of work to. Right. When it's done, it's probably going to be more of a restored car, and how correct it's going to be is up to who you commissioned to restore it and how much was there when you started. Right. At $150,000 to $175,000, it should be a really nice car. Yeah, it should be. Yeah. But let's let a professional inspect it and make that decision for us. Yeah. Right. Well, now that leads us to our next turbo car, right? Yeah, the 1M. We have that's the fourth consignment and final that we've brought down to Gooding. It's a 2011 1M, 740 of these built for the U.S. market. It's a twin turbo 3-liter. This is a 6,000 mile one owner car that we bought directly from the first owner. He emailed us through the website, ready to move on, and wanted a car that go to a good home, and we offered that and gave him a easy sales strategy. We sent him a wire transfer the next day and picked it up. Right. Put the car through the full program. All these cars we did, and so it's turnkey EAG ready to go. We'll see what the 1M market is feeling this time next week. Right. Okay. But it's cool because those two cars are pretty connected. The 1M really kind of set the way for where M was going to go after that. Right. That's the first M car with a turbo setup ever. The X5M sports activity vehicle technically is the first turbo before that, but that's not a car, as says BMW. They'll tell you very clearly that's not a car. Look at the front fascia design. It's the same 3-liter base with 2 turbos on the M3 and the M4 today. I think the next generation is going to be very, very similar to that, just further refined as BMW continues. And if you think about the history of BMW, they had a great 6-cylinder, right, 100 years ago, right, and they just kept making it better, and making it better and making it better and making it better, and that's when they went to the 6 throttle bodies on the S54. Probably the best inline 6-cylinder M engine ever built, in the E46 M3, and in these clown shoes. Right. Really high horsepower output to the displacement, won all the awards, knocked the S2000 engine off the leaderboard that was just there for a couple months, I think, back in 2000. And they just keep making what works better. And I mean, it's total German engineering at its finest. Right. And they just keep refining and refining. And so it's going to be interesting to see what output they get out of 3 liters again now. And I guess it's out on the X3M and X4M. Right. One was playing with me on the highway about 2 weeks ago. Whoever that was in Cincinnati, that X3M, I was driving an M5, and I mean, I was driving a Lime Rock. I was driving a Lime Rock. Oh, wow. So of course he's going to screw with me because I'm driving a bright orange car. Right. That was fun. And that car sounded good. He had some work done.
What color?
It was, I think it was silver. Okay. He was in my rear view the whole time, so I don't know.
Of course he was. Well, we've got 3 more cars to cover. Then we're going to do a little round of Keep, Cash, and Crush with Eric Keller. So these last 3 are a little different. We got some of the Z8s and Alpina, and why don't we go over these real quick?
So we've got an Alpina Z8 that is.
Oh yeah.
Should we start there?
Yeah.
Or you want to go the Alpina B7?
I want to do the end on the B7.
So the Alpina Z8 Roadster, it's called a BMW Alpina V8 Roadster. Alpina is its own manufacturer, as most people probably know, at least the BMW guys listening to your podcast here. This car is going to be pretty interesting to see what it does because it has 7 miles on it.
That is insane. That's not even it's not even delivery miles, is it?
Yeah, I mean, most are about that. Yeah, it's so that should be an interesting. They've got an estimate of $450,000 to $500,000. This is also at Gooding. It's black on black, which is a pretty good color combo. Not super rare, but not super common. Most of them are silver black, and if they're not silver black, they're silver red. If they're not silver red, they're black on black or black on crema, or black on red. And I think it'll do. It'll hammer at 400 for sure.
Right.
Definitely hammer at 400. I think it's a 12% commission. It's either 10 or 12%. So I don't think their estimate's too crazy. And you know, the European market on the Z8s is stronger than it is in North America. Typically, it costs about 30% to import a non-natural car to most European countries. And that typically has been the spread with Z8s as well as Alpinas relative to each of the markets. And so we'll typically see a lot of the standard Z8s sell for what we think are kind of staggering numbers. There are, though, a couple lighting configuration changes. It costs about 10 grand or so to convert it. But then there's another Z8 2001.
And that one's at RM, correct? Yeah.
Yep, that one's at RM. That is a 6,000 mile car, and color really matters with the Z8s, and most markets, color certainly matters. And this one's topaz blue over crema. It's a crema and black. Topaz blue is a gorgeous color, and actually we don't have that browser up, so we're going to skip it. But the topaz always sells really well. They've got an estimate of that one at 230 to 255 on 6,000 miles. Yeah, they'll do about that.
Yeah, I found these two interesting because one of them's an Alpina, but you also have the 7 mile. You know, that's just crazy factoring in. You know, it's interesting to see what the Alpina market, you know, is above and beyond the base car.
Yeah. The proportional delta has always been
15%.
Yeah, about. So we just sold the 2002 silver on red Z8 2 weeks ago.
That's a great color.
4,600 mile car, had a set of 20-inch Alpina wheels on it, so it's a little bit deceiving. But it's just a standard 6-speed Z8 with the Alpinas. That car did $220,000. And again, 4,600 miles. If that car was in a 03, it would have, in a standard Z8 with that setup, it would have done 230, 235. Translate to Alpina, that would do 260 to 270.
Okay.
Is about right. The gap is narrowed just a little bit in recent time. I think the 6 speeds, knowing that the market has certainly trended towards automatics. You know, the 3-pedal, the save the manuals, the 6-speed for life. You know, we subscribe to that more times than not. I think that there's definitely a use case for both of those cars. The Alpina has the better suspension, it has the better wheels, it has the better tires. It has a nice different blue gauge binnacle there. So the ultimate thing to do, which actually we're doing with the 2002 that we just sold, we're taking all of the cool stuff off of Alpina, a new parts bin, brand new from BMW, and we're basically taking a Z8 Roadster and adding the full Alpina suspension. It already had the Alpina wheels. We're doing a nice little dyno treatment to it to modernize the performance level, boost it up just a little bit, adding some integration on the media so that he can stream his Bluetooth and have telephone calls driving to and from the office, and tailoring the car to meet his 2020 use case, his use profile, and safely. That's something we do for all of our clients. If they're buying a car or want to send the car to it, we'll make it the way you want it right out the gates.
Yeah, that's awesome. Well, for our last car, this is a really special car, a 1982 Alpina B7 Turbo Coupe. Tell us about that car. That's got to be a rare one.
Yeah, the E24 6 Series platform is where Alpina really pushed, as well as the E12. And Alpina, you know, was a racing company that eventually turned into a manufacturing company to support their racing. And they sold cars as a manufacturer to support all of the racing endeavors.
Right.
And the B7s, both the E12, the E28, the E24 platforms, it's just a ripping car to drive.
Right.
I mean, when that boost comes on, it's a 3.5 liter. It's a KKK turbo, same turbo as you'll find on a 930. It's just, it puts you back. I mean,
right.
it's a good mid 300 horsepower, mid 300 torque car with really small updates to modern engine management. It's almost pushing 400, and we have I think you walked past it coming out in the shop here. We've got a 87 E28 Alpina B7 turbo. It's a /3, which is the final version of the E28 platform with the catalysts. And it's a Japanese spec car. Most of the Alpina market back in this time were slated for the Japanese market.
Oh,
that's where the luxury, Alpina was not slated to be an M competitor, rather a luxury brand that had all the performance, but also all the luxury as well. And that's why you'll see a lot more automatics proportionally to the manual. And that being a new technology back then, an automatic was a big luxury. It was a cost plus option. And if you had an automatic, that was all the news on in the neighborhood. Not so much today, now that everything else is automatic.
Right.
And it cost more back then, and it's worth less now.
Right.
So it's a little bit backwards. But finding a manual transmission Alpina in this period is actually quite a bit rarer than you'd think. This car, these are all over the board. This is another perfect example. You got to send a professional.
Right.
I mean, there's $60,000-$70,000 of receipts in the Alpina that we have prior to our acquisition, and he paid a lot of money for the car, and I think he probably paid more than he thought relative to what the car was going to need.
Right.
And what you pay for a car is not as important as what you own the car for 6 months or 12 months or 24 months from now, because it's the same wallet that money's coming out of.
Right.
It's just a different time.
Right.
And
either pay it up front or pay it later.
and usually the pay later comes surprises in much
multiples.
larger increments than you think. And
right.
running a workshop and having those exercises and experiences with guys that are buying these cars every day on Bring a Trailer and elsewhere, hey, I got a great deal on Bring a Trailer. Hey, Mike, we got another one. And it's $5,000. No, it's probably going to be more like 15. But
right.
we won't know until we see it. And does it need everything? No. We're going to recommend a longer list. We have a different experience base in order to make those recommendations, because you're going to spend the money on the things that we're recommending. We're just going to project out a little further than most other shops and ensuring that you're going into eyes wide open, and that's what we do to the cars we're selling. So why not present that to you as a potential owner of this, or as an owner of the car, as the car you already own.
Right.
It's not a pre-purchase inspection. It's a post-purchase inspection.
Right. Yeah, for sure. Well, that car is actually a great lead into my Keep Cash and Crush game I love to play. Now, this is where I get to have a little bit of fun. And honestly, the more painful it is for you, the better job I've done. So hopefully this is painful. We will see. So I pick out 3 cars for you, and you have to choose one to keep forever, one to cash in, and one to crush, send to the crusher.
Okay.
So I've picked out 3 very special cars for you. So the first car is the Alpina I saw a couple years ago. You'll have to clarify for our listeners, the 1 of 30, 1 of 4 with a stick shift, and 1 of 2 with this original engine that was parked out here.
Oh, that was my B7S.
That was your B7S.
Turbo. That was the granddaddy of this car.
Yeah.
The green one.
The best one, right? 1 of 2 original engines.
19,000 miles. Original interiors.
Original interior.
Yeah,
and now that
miles.
one will be reposted on my Instagram tomorrow.
That's
okay. That's one car. That's a tough car right there, right?
Well, I'm not crushing it. Next.
Well, okay. All right. Let's see if you stick to that. Let's see. The next one is Esther Malongo 1991 525 art car, which I know you know what it is because I'm looking at it right up there by your Valvoline oil cans.
Ah, yeah.
So a BMW art car, but one of the less powerful, not to my taste, cars.
So you have to crush an art car?
I don't know. We got a third choice. So the third choice, I think, is your favorite car. It's the BMW M1, but this one has a blown engine. Oh. So those are your 3 cars. 1 to keep, 1 to cash in, and 1 to crush.
Oh, all right.
So you're going to crush the art car now?
Nope, I'm crushing the M1.
You're crushing. Now, what if I said it didn't have a blown engine?
Oh, because I can rebuild it. I can rebuild that car.
All right, so
I can rebuild that car. So I'm crushing that one. That made it easy.
Oh, I made it too easy.
Yep,
on you. Okay.
yep. I'm crushing that one. The one I'm keeping and the one that
when you're cashing in, which one you keeping?
Well, I'm gonna keep the B7 and I'm gonna cash in on the art car.
All right.
There are no art cars in public hands, with maybe one exception. BMW has all of those, and that's obviously a priceless piece of history, both in the art community and the automotive community. And who's gonna, not that I'd want to cash in for that reason, but if we're playing the game,
right,
I would rather take care of my family and my staff and know that we don't have to worry as much anymore to be able to continue to have the fun that we do every day around here.
I didn't make it hard enough on you, darn it.
Well, you kind of asked the wrong guy.
I did ask the wrong guy. That's for sure. Okay. Well, thanks for your time today, man. What else would you like to share? You got any events coming up you're participating in? Obviously, you'll be at Amelia Island.
Yeah, so come see us, Amelia. This is going to be a really great event. Really excited about that. We'll be down there. So if you are, reach out. Vintage is an event in May. All the 2002s, E9s, the E34s, E30s, E28s, E24s, all the cars that we've talked about today. Anything from the mid-90s and back. The 8 Series. We didn't talk about the 850 CSI, which we could maybe throw that in now, I suppose.
Oh, we did. We just skipped one.
The 850 CSIs are welcome at the Vintage. That's a marvelous car. It's a flagship car. It's a poster 90s car. If you were anybody in the 90s, especially if you had a thing for pop-up headlights, you had an 850, and if you were if you were Prince or any pop star, you had an 850 CSI. I mean, they're $100 and change thousand in 1994, and King Griffey Jr. had one.
Well, I'm so glad you said that, because first off, there's a yellow one sitting out front. I've never seen a yellow one before. Tell us about that car.
Yeah, that's a Euro spec 850 CSI that we just bought that also just arrived today. It's been raining amazing cars at EAG this week. We're getting ready for spring. Spring fever's already hit, and thankfully we've been restocking as fast as the opportunity allows, because if we look at 10 cars, we sometimes don't buy any of them.
Right.
And usually the cars that are offered to us are the ones that we buy, as opposed to the ones that we're looking for. Most of the best cars typically find us, and that was one of those cases. My phone rang, and got a good car, and of course a week later here it is again.
Right.
But the 850 is a marvelous car. It's a great GT car. It drives well. It's awesome. It's a V12. It's the same engine block as a McLaren F1.
Right.
It has the double Vanos head that you'll find on the Euro spec E36 M3s. 6 speeds, the first 6-speed V12 to come to the production market for any manufacturer. BMW spent over $900 million developing the 8 Series platform, and the 850 CSI is the pinnacle of that exercise.
Right.
So driving that car, it's hard not to feel pretty special.
Yeah, and I think, correct me if I'm wrong, but people were hesitant with that car for a while because of the maintaining it.
Oh, yeah,
right?
yeah, actually.
So you got to be really picky when you...
Absolutely. That car's, that's a very technical car. And I was the biggest, and still am, proponent that 850s are tough. You're going to spend some money. It's rewarding, and you get the car right, it's worth it. But
did you take one out at the Pebble last year?
I took 2 years ago, yeah.
Was it white?
Yeah, white one, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, we won Best of Class at the Concours on the Avenue with that car.
Oh, nice.
And actually the 5,000-mile Evo 2 was in that class.
Oh, wow. Wow, you beat your own car.
Sorry, bud. Sorry for bud. It had a lot of good provenance as well. And but driving that, we drove that car all the way around. That's actually, we did the podcast with Matt Fair on Smoking Tire.
Oh, okay.
As I drove that car to Matt's facility, and actually I tracked that car at Thermal too.
Oh, wow.
Just 2 laps, but
right.
It counts. But the 850 is an awesome car. So we do have a couple really cool 850s, and this is a Euro spec car, which has some trick stuff, bigger brakes, 4-wheel steering, bigger, has an oil cooler, differential cooler, etc. But so back to the Vintage, which is a really cool event.
All right.
If you're going to North Carolina, it's May 17th through the 20th. That also coincides with the BMW Foundation's open house and their new unveiling of their exhibit. They're just staging the cars right now for the next exhibit. The Passion exhibit just ended. That was their third. The fourth one, which is Genesis. Genesis is going to be all of the early cars that started the brand and helped BMW get to the base that they're at now. They're still a privately held company. It should be a really great exhibit, and we'll be there the day it opens with all the rest of the Vintage guys. About 600 to 700 cars. You got to register early, so if you're thinking about doing it, don't wait. The registration does close out at thevintage.com. So good plug for those guys. Really excited to do that. We're going to have an EAG gathering at that event, so we are going to get all of the EAG guys. We've never done this before. We're going to see, and every client that has an EAG BMW would love to have a little party for everybody. We're paying beer and drinks and food and all that stuff. We're going to do Sierra Nevada. I'm probably putting my foot in my mouth because we have nothing planned. But we'd love to have everybody out to have an EAG car corral and bring all the EAG alumni together. Would be a really cool exercise. So if you're interested, definitely check it out at thevintage.com.
Awesome. Well, thanks for your time today, Eric.
Absolutely, Greg. Thanks for having us, and motor on.
Thanks for listening to the Collector Car Podcast. Don't forget to give us a nice rating on iTunes and be sure to follow us on Instagram and everywhere else at the Collector Car Podcast.